You ever notice how a totally simple experience, like a school trip, can somehow end up revealing these really deep truths about life and wisdom and the choices we make? Well, today we're going to unpack a story that does exactly that. So let's dive into this tale of a backpacking trip that turns into this powerful, allegory for free will and all its consequences.
So it all starts when this student, Evan, gets back from his trip. His dad asks him if it was bad, and Evan's answer is what kicks off this entire story. He just says, more like, that revealing. And that one line, right there, it just sets the stage for a story that's way less about camping and a lot more about the tough lessons you learn when you decide to just go your own way.
Okay, so what was this trip all about? Well, it was a school backpacking trip, and it was led by this very interesting character. The students called him the General Administrative Wise Director, or you guessed it, God for short. And God, he had a plan for them, a guide, really, to help them survive out there in the mountains. And this guide was called the Wise Instruction List, or God's Will. Now, the really important thing here is that this list isn't a bunch of commands. Nope, it's counsel based on actual experience. You know, everything you need to be safe and prepared, from a warm sleeping bag to proper hiking boots. But God makes it super clear. It's optional, but highly recommended. The choice is totally theirs. And right here is where the central conflict pops up. Do the students actually follow the expert advice? Oh, not even close. Most of them decide they know better. They turn to Google, treating it like their own personal prophet, and they start creating their own not-so-wise lists. They want to forge their own path, guided by algorithms and blog posts instead of, proven wisdom.
So right from the jump, we've got two completely different ways of tackling this challenge. It's a classic setup, right? One path is based on this handed-down wisdom, and the other is based on self-directed and, let's be honest, completely untested ideas. Let's see how these two philosophies actually play out.
And wow, this just lays out the divide perfectly. On one side, you've got God's will. It comes from experience, and its goal is survival. Yeah, the burden is a heavy pack, sure, but that pack is protective. Then, on the other side, you have the students' lists, which are sourced from these Google prophets and are all about experience and self-expression. Their burden isn't weight, it's the harsh, cold reality of being unprepared.
So what do these not-so-wise choices actually look like? Well, get this. Some decided sleeping bags were unnecessary because of global warming. Others skipped the tents to get a more immersive nature experience. A big group planned to just eat raw bugs for sustainability, while others ditched their flashlights to prevent light pollution. It's a pretty wild look at how an idea can completely steamroll basic common sense.
And this was their big rallying cry. Whenever they were questioned, this is what they'd say. We're exercising our right to use our creative free will. We're going to learn from our own experiences. It's a really powerful statement of independence for sure, but as we're about to see, experience can be a very harsh teacher when you ignore all the warnings. Okay, so the choices have been made, the bus is gone, and the hike begins. This is where the rubber meets the road, or in this case, where bare feet meet super sharp rocks. The consequences of rejecting wisdom aren't just an idea anymore. Oh no, they're about to get very, very real and very painful. Our first little case study is a student named Rev. He's a big believer in earthing, this idea that direct contact with the ground is going to heal his negative emotions. So naturally, he leaves his hiking boots on the bus. He picks this abstract belief over the very practical protection that God's will recommended for a treacherous mountain trail. And the result is instant. I mean, just 15 minutes in, he's limping. But listen to his reaction. He doesn't say, wow, I made a really bad choice. He says, my poor soul is being unfairly picked on. He actually personifies the rocks and branches as evil, blaming them for attacking him. He completely refuses to take ownership of his decision, and instead he just casts himself as a victim of the trail.
Then you've got Diesel. His fantasy is to just game all night without his parents bothering him. So he brings a full desktop computer and a 100-foot extension cord, totally convinced he'll just find an outlet somewhere. The story says he just abandons the whole setup by the side of the trail when reality hits. It's just a perfect, hilarious example of a personal desire being completely disconnected from the actual environment.
This table really just connects all the dots, doesn't it? The students' abstract justifications are laid out right next to the very real, very tangible consequences. Grounding negative feelings leads directly to bleeding feet. Eating sustainable bugs leads to, well, vomiting. Avoiding light pollution leads to tripping and falling in the dark. The cause and effect here is just undeniable.
So this brings us to the real philosophical heart of the story. I mean, we've seen the foolish choices and we've seen the painful results. So why does the person in charge, the wise director, just stand by and let it all happen? Why doesn't he step in? And this is the question Evan asks his dad, and it's probably the one we're all thinking right now. God is the expert. He knows what's going to happen. So why grant them the freedom to get hurt, to be cold and hungry? Why not just make them follow the list and guarantee that they'll be safe?
And here's the story's really profound answer. If God forces everyone to obey, then he becomes responsible for everything. If a student is unhappy, well, that's God's fault. But by allowing them to choose, he also gives them the chance to own the outcome of that choice. The responsibility and the lesson that comes with it becomes theirs.
Evan just puts it perfectly right here. Being forced to obey might lead to safety in the short term, but it prevents any real growth from happening. It's in that messy space of making a choice, seeing what happens, and then taking ownership of the mistake, that's where true learning happens. The freedom to fail is also the freedom to grow. So the crucial point is this four-step process that the story lays out. It starts with receiving wise counsel, like GAWL. Then you exercise your own free will. Next, you have to face the natural consequences. That's just feedback from reality itself. And finally, if you take responsibility for it all, that's where genuine growth really happens.
This is really the ultimate takeaway from the whole story. The journey isn't about being a perfect follower. It's about learning how to navigate the immense power of choice. True strength isn't built by having someone else carry your pack for you. It's built by learning how to carry your own, even when it's heavy, and taking full responsibility for the path you decide to walk.
And so, this allegory leaves us with a really powerful question for our own lives. I mean, we are all surrounded by Google prophets and endless instruction lists promising an easier or more enlightened way to do things. The story challenges us to think critically. In a world of infinite choices and competing voices, whose wisdom do you trust? And are you prepared to own the consequences of that choice?